I sliced his name out of a laugh and watched it hang in the air like a cigarette ash, soft, careless, impossible to scrape back into the pack. "Mark's so boring," I said, louder than I meant, the words ricocheting off glass and lacquered shoes at the office party. The room smelled of cheap champagne and someone's cologne that wanted to be a memory. Evan's hand found the small of my back, and I let it. The shock of it felt like coming up for air. The hook of that moment, my tongue sharper than my mind, is still a raw thing when I close my eyes. I remember the way the fluorescent lights sharpened his cheekbones, how his laugh made a small, private room behind my ribs open. I remember the taste of guilt on my tongue, like coin metal, and how it glinted when I tasted it again. It was supposed to be harmless. Small transgressions are the best liars, a touch at a canopy tray, a joke aimed like a dart. Evan was everything Mark was not: quick, bold, dangerous like a street lamp you shouldn't step under. Mark, my husband, was the steady hum of the refrigerator, reliable, warm in a familiar way, unspectacular. I told myself I was bored, not evil. I told myself I deserved to feel seen. Evan leaned in. "You don't mean that," he murmured, and the word "you" made my skin tighten. I hadn't meant it, and yet I had wanted the space of saying it. The room between truth and a lie felt like possibility. Later, when the party softened into thinned-out cigarette smoke and a playlist that insisted on being an anthem, Mark messaged, "Where are you?" "Home in 5. I texted back a lie that looked like a truth. "Leaving now." The taxi smelled like fried onions. The city slid past in rectangles of neon. My stomach kept asking for absolution. My mouth kept practicing excuses. When I opened the apartment, the light was low, Mark's silhouette a raw ridge against the couch. He did not look surprised. He did not look angry. He looked tired in a way that made my heart drop. The tired of someone who has been waiting for years and finally ran out of pieces to pretend we're whole. "You were at the party," he said. His voice held a blankness that was worse than a shout. "I saw you with Evan." My words fell into the space between us, like unfinished nails. I started to explain, hands gesturing like someone trying to catch steam. He only shook his head, slow, careful, like someone cataloging damage for a later report. "Do you know what else I saw?" He stood and crossed to me the way someone crosses a room to close a window before the rain gets in. In his hand, a small stack of Polaroids, edges curled from time, a smell of cheap hotel soap clinging to them. I recognized the handwriting on the back of the top one, my own, scribbled once when we first learned to make things with our hands. "June, remember?" My laugh turned brittle. "Those are old," I said. He let the photographs fall into my lap like confession. The first showed Mark and a woman, not me, in a hotel doorway, laughing, their faces so near they blurred into the same light. The second showed the same woman and Evan, their hands under a table like conspirators. The third was the one that made the world tilt. 2 men, heads bowed together, a private joke between the lines. For a raw second, I didn't understand betrayal as a single arrow. Betrayal is a net. It has knots in unexpected places. The photographs were a map of threads connecting everyone I'd thought were separate islands. Mark's quiet life had maps that reached into our marriage in places I had been blind to. Evan's flashes of attention were not just a flirtation. They were part of that same loom. "You were sleeping with her?" My voice was a childish whisper of accusation, and then the question reared into something more. "Who is she?" Mark's jaw hovered over words. He swallowed, the sound like someone trying to move furniture. "She's Anna." My throat closed on the name. Anna, my friend who brought wine when Mark had the flu, who knew the exact tuck of our sheets and the shape of our routines. Anna with the laugh that sounded like homework done early. Anna, who had once attended our wedding reception wearing the same dress I had planned to wear on our 10th anniversary. "And Evan?" I asked. I realized I was asking because I needed the line to be clean, to separate wrongdoers into boxes to be sorted and dealt with. "He's..." Mark's eyes flicked away, and for the first time, I saw the small islands of guilt on him. "He's been sleeping with her." With both of them, sometimes separate, sometimes together. My mind tried to stitch sense on top of sense and failed. There was a logic that felt slipperier than oil. The images stacked, hand on back at the party, Mark's sudden absences, Evan's compliments that landed like hooks. The slow-burn suspicions I'd quieted with jokes boomed into alarms. "You let me humiliate myself at the party," I said, the accusation tasting like metal. "You stood there and watched me flirt." He sat. The couch took him with a tired, inevitable thud. "I came to the party early." The sentence cracked when he said it. The edges were ragged. "I left early because someone had to go home and pretend to be the reasonable one. If I'd stopped you, you'd have told me I was jealous. If I'd followed you out, you'd have called me controlling." His hand found mine in the dark. Not the hand of a conspirator, but the hand of someone who had rehearsed apology until the words looked like new coins. "We were trying to keep things hidden," he said. "From everyone. From ourselves. Anna wanted to be seen, Evan wanted different things. I thought I could manage it. I thought keeping separate lives would keep the marriage safe." Guilt and rage made the apartment tilt again. My betrayal loomed, loud, undeniable. But somewhere under that roar, a new, colder betrayal spread out like spilled ink. Mark had not merely cheated. He had created a lattice of deceptions that pulled people into each other's orbits until no one could tell which gravity belonged to which heart. "Why?" I asked, the question smaller than the wound. "Why her? Why him?" He shrugged, a small, human motion. "Because we were selfish. Because we wanted to feel something that didn't belong to us. Because the thing we had was steady, and that steadiness can feel like a cage." It was an answer that made no moral sense but felt true, a list of reasons people give themselves to keep breathing. Outside, the city hummed with other lives, small betrayals and small mercies. I thought of the party, of my insult like a thrown stone, and realized I had been both flinger and stone. The slow burn hints had been everywhere, a voicemail erased, a lipstick on a coffee mug I'd blamed on a coworker, a text chain I'd glanced at and closed because denial is a reflex muscle. We are experts at lying to ourselves. In the weeks that followed, the stretch of time where old bones set into new shapes, the photographs became evidence, not of a single crime, but of the complex architecture of human desire. There were apologies that tasted earnest and pleas that sounded rehearsed. There were arrangements, boundaries drawn like topography, or else the slow, tender negotiations of people trying to repair the map they had ripped. The twist, the final teeth of the story. When I went back through the Polaroids with light held to each face, with shadows peeled back, I found one picture I had missed. It was the simplest. Evan, Mark, and Anna in a photo booth, smiling, their shoulders touching like a family portrait gone wrong. We had been living parallel betrayals, not in secret from one another, but entwined with each other's breath. That night I understood something I had not allowed myself before. Betrayal does not always sit on the shoulders of one guilty person. It often grows in clusters, feeding off loneliness and hunger, and the people we hurt are not always the ones who intended harm. I had wanted to be seen, they had wanted the same. We had used each other as mirrors. When Mark reached for my hand across the table one last time, years and choices heavy between us, I let him. It was not forgiveness, not yet. It was the small, human decision to breathe with someone I had once loved into the same room and see if the air between us could be made breathable again. Outside, a car alarm began and faded. Somewhere, a laugh rose and broke. The party continued in other apartments, other people. My life, like a Polaroid, had been exposed to light and developed fast. It would never be the picture I thought I had. But in the ruin of what I had assumed, in the strange, luminous mess of our betrayals, I found, bitter and bright, a truth. We had all been unfaithful to the idea of honesty long before we were unfaithful to each other.